All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we're diving into the art and really the mind of Bob Camblin.
Oh, an excellent choice. Camblin's one of those figures who's always sort of lingered in my own creative process.
Absolutely. And honestly, the more we dug into the materials to this one, the more fascinating it became. I mean, we've got excerpts from this collection of his quotes, kind of cryptic, but definitely insightful biographical notes that sketch out, a life but leave these big gaps. And then there's the YouTube video, Leave Only a Trace, which, well, we'll get into that.
And selections from Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, which, hints at some of his philosophical leanings. Plus, we've got excerpts from his collected works, at least Volume 1, and then to round it all out, some historical perspectives, reviews, forewords, and even a personal reflection from Earl Staley, who knew Camblin. It's a real mix.
It is, and that's part of what makes this so intriguing. Right from the start, Camblin presents this paradox. He's widely respected. His pieces are, highly sought after by collectors, but there's this real lack of comprehensive information about his full body of work. Thousands of pieces exist, we know that, but the details are, well, they're kind of scarce.
Exactly. It's almost like this deliberate cultivation of mystery, which of course just makes him even more captivating.
Right, it pulls you in. So let's start, I guess, at the beginning. Camblin was born in Oklahoma in 1928, and his early experiences there seem to have really shaped his artistic sensibilities. He honed his skills at the Kansas City Art Institute, and then, boom, Fulbright scholarship to Italy. A pretty significant turning point, I'd say.
Oh, definitely. But even before Italy, there are these intriguing hints in his biography about how his time in Ponca City, Oklahoma, during the Marland oil boom and even the presence of that iconic pioneer woman statue, left this kind of subtle mark.
The oil boom, yeah. You can almost imagine the energy, the rapid change, the sense of, I don't know, both immense scale and this underlying impermanence all swirling around him.
And the pioneer woman statue. Think about that. Solitary strength, resilience against this vast landscape.
Mm.
It echoes subtly in some of his later depictions of lone figures confronting these expansive, often abstract environments. You see this theme of human endurance against a larger backdrop recurring in several of his series.
It's like those early experiences planted seeds that blossomed later in his work. And then, of course, there's the impact of The Wizard of Oz, which he saw as a young boy. You mentioned this before we started recording, and I have to say that connection just clicked for me.
Right, the journey through fantastical landscapes, the exploration of illusion versus reality, all these themes that resonate with some of Camblin's later artistic concerns.
It's all connected. And it wasn't just visual influences either. Camblin was an incredibly voracious reader. Emerson, the I Ching, haiku, he immersed himself in it all.
And that's so important, right? That literary foundation absolutely enriched his conceptual framework. Emerson, with his focus on individualism and intuition, likely nurtured Camblin's independent artistic path. The I Ching, with its emphasis on constant change and interconnectedness, well, that mirrors the themes of transience and transformation we see in his art.
And haiku, with its ability to capture a fleeting moment and reveal these deep insights through such simple imagery, that aligns so perfectly with the suggestive nature of his visual work. It's like he's creating visual haiku in a way.
I like that visual haiku. That captures it well. So we have this foundation. His childhood, his education, the move to Italy. Then Camblin embarks on a teaching career, holding positions at several universities before deciding, in 1976, to dedicate himself fully to his art.
But even during those academic years, the artistic drive was clearly there. And then when he arrived in Houston, that's when some crucial collaborations began. He teamed up with Earl Staley and Joe Tate, creating these collaborative events and exhibitions. First, they called themselves B&E Productions, then later, the Holding Firm. Names that immediately suggest something a little more, I don't know, unconventional.
Absolutely. It's like they were consciously pushing against the traditional art world.
Uh-huh.
B&E Productions, it has this, I don't know, almost subversive ring to it. And the holding firm suggests this collective artistic stance. Earl Staley, in his reflections, really emphasizes how important their collaborative drawing and painting was to his own artistic development. It was Camblin's vision that directly influenced him.
So we have these shared studio spaces, collaborative events, this emphasis on the creative process itself. And it even goes further, right?
Yeah.
Because they often sign their collaborative works as anonymous.
Right, anonymous. Imagine that in today's art world. It's like a deliberate downplaying of the individual ego, a real commitment to the work itself, the shared artistic idea, rather than, personal recognition.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about one specific piece that we have a lot of source material on, Leave Only a Trace.
Leave only a trace.
Yeah.
Such an evocative title.
It is. Our sources describe it as this predominantly monochromatic work, mostly shades of gray, black, and these kind of muted blues, but with these subtle yellow highlights. It depicts a tilted glass bottle adrift on dark, rippling water, and above it, a moonlit sky.
And in the distance, there's this dark, circular shape. It could be the moon or maybe symbolically a skull. It's hard to say for sure. Casts this eerie glow on the whole scene.
And the sky itself is rendered with these broad, swirling strokes, which are then reflected in the ripples of the water. And then at the very bottom, you can barely make them out, but there are these faint traces of text or symbols, and over those, a small red mark. What strikes you first about this description?
Solitude, honestly. That overwhelming sense of solitude, the vastness of the dark water, the expansive sky, it really dwarfs this single man-made object. And the limited color palette, it definitely contributes to that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Reminds me a bit of Whistler's Nocturnes, those paintings that often used a restricted range of tones to evoke a sense of mood and mystery.
I see that. And then there's the ambiguity of that distant, dark orb, moon or skull. It introduces this element of psychological tension, right? Like, what is it we're actually seeing? And they're textual elements. Those definitely hint at surrealism or symbolism, movements that explored dreamlike imagery and, gave these deeper meanings to everyday objects.
Exactly. It's like this ordinary bottle is suddenly imbued with this profound but ultimately open-ended significance. And the title itself, Leave Only a Trace, it immediately brings to mind these themes of transience, the fleeting nature of existence.
Right. This lone bottle in this dim, immense setting with that ephemeral text, it really underscores how minimal our individual presence can be against the grand scale of nature and time. And even that tiny golden reflection on the water, it's like this brief glimmer of hope or a fading memory that's about to disappear completely.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And the interpretation offered by the YouTube channel, Incomplete Works, it adds even more depth. They suggest the bottle, and those ripples actually symbolize the transient nature of, well, everything, including the self, the individual ego.
That's fascinating. So the bottle isn't just a bottle, it's a metaphor.
Right. And they point out the hexagram way before completion, which adds this layer of potential and transition that connects back to the teachings of Lao Tzu, who emphasize subtlety and the natural flow of things.
I see. So it's not just about the fleeting nature of things, but also about the potential within that constant change.
Exactly. And they go even further, suggesting the piece is a meditation on existential minimalism, urging us to question our need for permanence in a world that's constantly in flux. And they even propose that the bottle itself could be a metaphor for the creative process, this fragile vessel carrying ideas adrift on the sea of, well, existence, much like the human condition itself.
Wow, that's really powerful. So the bottle as both the creative act and a representation of ourselves, that definitely aligns with what we're seeing with Camblin's tendency to weave these deeper philosophical inquiries into his visual language. Okay, so now let's zoom out a bit and look at the broader arc of his artistic evolution. We know his early work had elements of social protest, lots of strong outlines, flat colors.
Right. Very graphic. But then he starts to merge this social realism with non-objective approaches, depicting these human symbols. And apparently his Fulbright experience in Italy played a huge role in that shift. He was exposed to the work of Cremoni, who's known for those distorted figures, those ambiguous spaces. And then, of course, the ancient Etruscan figurines with their stylized forms and, that sense of ancient mystery.
It sounds like that Italian period was a real melting pot of influences. Cremoni pushing him away from straightforward depiction towards something more suggestive, more psychologically charged. And then the Etruscan figurines, perhaps sparking that interest in archetypal forms, symbols that go beyond simple likeness.
It's all there, brewing beneath the surface. Then we see this major shift towards drawings, which become, in his words, ends in themselves. They often reach these monumental scales, exploring some really profound subjects. And it's interesting, he starts incorporating what he called corrections into these early masterpieces.
Corrections, like he messed up and had to fix them.
Well, not quite. He used white gouache and pasted paper, so it's very deliberate. Not just, covering up a mistake. These corrections become part of the artwork's history, its texture, adding these layers of process and time.
So it's like he's embracing imperfection, showing the evolution of the piece.
Yes, making his artistic thought process visible. The adjustments, the reconsiderations, they all contribute to the final statement.
I like that. Then, moving into the 1960s, Camblin aims to combine the poetic suggestions of Hugo van der Goes, the early Netherlandish painter, with the raw emotionality of Goya. Quite an ambitious goal.
It is, and he keeps using applied paper, even noting how the tones subtly shift over time. He was very aware of the aging process of his materials, as an inherent part of the artwork.
That's fascinating. It's like the artwork itself is undergoing this continuous transformation. And then the 1970s hit, and Camlin really dives into these mystical themes. He's trying to evoke inner states of mind, exploring the life cycle, birth, death, regeneration, metamorphosis.
Right, that's key. You start seeing these recurring images. Puppets, scarecrows, skulls, murky water contained in glass reliquaries, all these loaded symbols. And importantly, he encourages viewers to bring their own interpretations to the work.
So he's not dictating meaning, he's inviting participation.
Exactly. Those recurring images, they're rich with symbolic potential. The puppets hinting at manipulation, our own sense of agency, the scarecrows embodying impermanence, maybe even a connection to the natural world. Skulls, those stark reminders of mortality. And the reliquaries, with their obscured contents, suggest hidden meanings, the passage of time.
It's like he's creating these visual riddles that we have to unravel. Then, in the 1980s, things take another interesting turn. He starts interweaving drawings and watercolors, creating these illusionistic surfaces that often conceal camouflaged images, hidden meanings that are only revealed through closer observation.
It's almost playful, isn't it? Setting up these visual puzzles, rewarding those who really take the time to look. And those hidden images, they add this layer of mystery, this element of discovery. You're not just passively observing, you're actively participating.
And then there's Musha Volantes, the style he developed with Nancy Giordano, using dots and dashes to create optical illusions. Again, playing with perception, pushing boundaries.
For the collaborative spirit shines through again. And those optical illusions, they force your eye, your mind to actively construct the image. So once again, that active role of the observer is crucial.
Okay, so we've touched on a lot of different periods, different styles, but throughout it all, Camblin consistently collaborated with others and often signed his work as anonymous. That's a pretty strong statement, don't you think?
It is. It's like he's saying, hey, it's not about me, it's about the work itself. And maybe it's even a subtle critique of the art world's obsession with individual fame. By giving up his name, he's prioritizing the collective artistic endeavor.
So as we pull all of this together, what would you say are some of the central concepts, the overarching themes that really define Camblin's artistic vision?
Well, the theme of impermanence, that's definitely central. We see it in Leave Only a Trace and throughout his work. And there's this focus on paradoxes, which one of our sources called paradoxes made visible. Things like traps that don't trap or structures that don't move. It's like these visual koans designed to make you think.
Right. It's not art that gives you easy answers. It's art that makes you ask questions.
Exactly. And his work really blurs the lines between art and philosophy. It's like he's posing these profound questions disguised as images. And then there's this idea of everyday enlightenment, finding meaning in the seemingly absurd, humor in decay, acceptance in constant change.
And let's not forget the crucial role of the viewer. Camblin's art demands engagement. You can't just glance at it and move on. You have to participate. You have to look for those hidden meanings, unravel those mysteries.
It's an invitation to self-inquiry, to discovering your own meaning within the work. And Camblin, he seemed to have a complex relationship with the art world. The whole system of critics and commercialism. He really wanted to connect directly with the viewer's soul, to bypass all that noise. And that quote from Earl Staley where he describes Camblin as a kind of distillation of art, always striving for purity and expression, that really captures it.
Yeah, that quote stuck with me too. It speaks to this unwavering artistic integrity that guided Camblin. He played the art game, but he played it on his own terms, trusting in the work itself and, a good dose of common sense. And the theme of transformation, metamorphosis, that's woven throughout his work, especially in the 1970s, it connects back to that idea of constant change, the cyclical nature of things, which ties into his fascination with the I Ching.
Absolutely. Okay, so wrapping up, let's touch on Camblin's later life and the legacy he leaves behind.
In 1976, he made the bold decision to leave academia and embrace the nomadic artist life, traveling extensively. His works, of course, became highly collectible, and his influence on contemporary artists is undeniable. He eventually settled in Oregon and then later in Louisiana, becoming a bit reclusive in his later years.
That move away from academia speaks volumes, doesn't it? It reinforces this image of an artist who prioritizes his creative journey above all else. And the fact that his work is still so sought after, that his influence is still felt today, That speaks to the enduring power of his vision, even for those who might not know all the details of his life. And even after his death in 2003, there are still people working to organize exhibitions of his work to keep that legacy alive.
It's clear that Bob Camblin was an incredibly complex, deeply thoughtful artist. His work goes far beyond just aesthetics. It makes you think about transience, about perception, about the very nature of the human condition.
His enigmatic personality and those layers of meaning embedded within his art, they'll continue to fascinate and challenge us for years to come. And you, listening to this, now have a much richer understanding of his journey, his philosophies, the intricate meanings he wove into his creations, especially that powerful image from Leave Only a Trace.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but as we end this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought, something to ponder. Considering Camblin's focus on hidden meanings and the importance of the viewer's role, what traces are you leaving in the world? What might those traces mean to others, or even to your future self? Maybe the act of creation in any form and the act of truly seeing, in the spirit of Bob Camblin, are themselves profound ways of leaving a trace, a mark on this constantly evolving fabric of existence.
And on that note, I think we'll leave it there for today.
Until next time.